All right, let's dive in today. We're going deep into the world of handball, specifically the career of Mikkel Hansen.
One of the all-time greats for sure.
We've got excerpts from a recent article about him, and it's more than just a sports story, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
This is about resilience, facing challenges head-on, and how someone at the top of their game deals with the unexpected.
It's fascinating, right? Because with Mikkel's story, you see, it goes beyond just the trophies and records.
Right.
You really get into the human side of things, like the pressure of legacy, the mental toughness to not just succeed, but to keep pushing even when things fall apart.
And they did fall apart in ways you wouldn't expect, but let's start at the beginning. Mikkel's dad, Flemming Hansen, was a Danish national team player, so handball was basically in Mikkel's DNA from day one.
Wow, talk about pressure. I mean, to make your own mark with that kind of family history.
I can't even imagine.
It's a double-edged sword, really.
It is, yeah.
On one hand, you've got this built-in understanding of the sport, almost like a head start.
Yeah.
But then, you've got the constant comparisons, the weight of expectation to not just be good, but to live up to a legend.
Yeah.
It's a lot to carry for a young athlete.
And it's not just about being good. Mikkel was exceptional. Like, even as a kid, those left-handed shots he's known for.
Oh, yeah?
Apparently, they were already causing chaos in youth leagues way before he went pro.
Oh, that left-handed dominance was key. It wasn't just the power, it was the unpredictability. Defenders just weren't used to that angle of attack, especially with his height and agility.
Right.
He could just create these scoring opportunities, that most players wouldn't even see.
So you've got this prodigy tearing up the Danish leagues, and naturally, the big clubs come calling. At just 20 years old, he signs with FC Barcelona. Now, Barcelona in handball, it's like, the Real Madrid of handball.
Right.
They expect to win, and they expect their stars to deliver. That's a whole other level of pressure, I'd imagine.
Huge leap, especially culturally. Imagine being that young, moving to a new country, where everything's different style of play, the language, the whole environment. It's sink or swim. And while Mikkel was obviously talented, the results, well, they weren't what everyone anticipated.
Yeah, the article doesn't really dig deep into this period, but I'm curious, was it just him needing time to adapt? Or were there, tactical clashes, maybe personality conflicts within the team? It's not like Mikkel to just fade into the background.
That's the big question. The article, it doesn't really go into specifics, but you have to wonder, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Barcelona's system, maybe it just wasn't the right fit for his strengths at that time.
Right.
Maybe they tried to, mold him into a specific role that didn't really play to his natural instincts.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, at 20, he was still developing as a player.
So after a couple of seasons, Mikkel heads back to Denmark, joins AG Copenhagen. And this is where things really take off, We're talking IHF World Player of the Year in 2011, leading the team to championships, basically becoming the superstar everyone knew he could be. What changed? Was it simply being back on home turf?
It was definitely more than just a change of scenery.
Right.
While being back in a familiar environment probably helped, Mikkel was also evolving as a player.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't just relying on raw talent anymore. He was becoming a more intelligent, more tactical player.
I'd imagine that Barcelona experience, tough as it was, played a role in that development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was like a trial by fire. He had to learn how to adapt, how to fight for his place, how to think strategically against top-level competition. And he came out the other side, stronger, more mature, with a deeper understanding of the game.
Right.
It's like Barcelona inadvertently, forged this weapon that would then dismantle every other team in Denmark.
So things are looking pretty rosy at this point. Mikkel's on top of the world, winning everything in sight. But then 2012 rolls around, and AG Copenhagen folds. Just like that, the team's gone.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a punch to the gut. What happened? Did the owner just lose interest?
It was a financial collapse.
Oh, wow.
And a sudden one. Imagine being on top of your game, feeling invincible, and suddenly, boom, the rug's pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
The club went bankrupt, players scattered, and Mikkel, he was left wondering what was next.
That's got to mess with your head.
Yeah.
You're dealing with the loss of a team, the loss of momentum, the uncertainty of where to go next. You'd think that could derail a player, maybe even make them question their commitment.
And that's where we see the mental toughness that truly defines Mikkel Hansen, right?
Yeah.
He could have easily just wallowed in disappointment, but instead he saw it as a new challenge. He signed with PSG Handball. and basically picked up where he left off, maybe even stepped it up a notch.
Oh yeah, those PSG years were insane. Multiple IHF World Player of the Year awards, top scorer in pretty much every competition, and domestic titles galore. But for me, the highlight has got to be the 2016 Olympics in Rio, leading Denmark to their first ever handball gold medal. Talk about a storybook moment.
It's the kind of achievement that cements a legacy. And to do it on the Olympic stage against the best in the world, it doesn't get much bigger than that. But you know what's often overlooked?
What's that?
Even in those moments of triumph, there are often unseen struggles. The pressure to perform at that level, the weight of a nation's expectations, it takes its toll, even on the strongest individuals.
It's crazy to think that winning Olympic gold, I mean, that's the ultimate, right?
I think so, yeah.
Like the peak of a career. But when you dig deeper into Mikkel's story, it turns out even after reaching those incredible heights, there were challenges brewing beneath the surface.
It's easy to assume that these athletes are invincible, almost superhuman. But what Mikkel's story shows is that even at the top, there's a human vulnerability. You know, in 2022, he was diagnosed with phlebitis and a pulmonary embolism.
Yeah.
These weren't just minor injuries. These were serious health issues, things that could ended his career. I mean, they even threatened his life.
I remember reading about that at the time. I was like, how does this happen to someone so young and fit?
Right.
It just shows you those things can affect anyone, no matter how strong they are.
It's a reality check. It forces us to confront the fragility, even of the strongest among us. And for Mikkel, it wasn't just the physical impact. Imagine, being an athlete who's defined by movement, by pushing your body to the limit, and then suddenly you're forced into inactivity. That's a huge mental adjustment.
Absolutely. It's not just the physical recovery. It's the mental side, being sidelined, the fear of not knowing if you'll ever be the same again. And on top of that, he was dealing with stress and depression, even after winning the World Cup with Denmark in 2023. It's like all those victories, they were masking a deeper struggle.
That's the thing about mental health, right? It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care about your success or achievements.
Right.
And for someone like Mikkel, who's always been this symbol of strength, resilience, to admit vulnerability, that must have been so difficult.
The article mentions his wife, Stephanie Gundelach, played a big role in encouraging him to get help, to put his mental well-being first. I think that says a lot about having a strong support system, even when you're at the top of your game.
It's a powerful reminder that we all need that. People who can see us, hear us, and support us, especially when we're struggling.
Yeah.
And in Mikkel's case, it led to him making a really tough decision, but ultimately a courageous one.
Yeah.
To step away from handball, at least temporarily.
That must have been a huge decision, especially with the Paris Olympics coming up, to walk away from the sport he loves, potentially miss out on a final chance at glory. It takes a lot of strength to put your well-being first.
It goes against that never give up mentality, right?
Yeah.
Which is so ingrained in athletes. But it also shows his maturity, his self-awareness. He realized that pushing through could have had serious consequences, not just for his career, but for his overall health and happiness. And thankfully, he had the support to make that choice.
So, after taking some time off, Mikkel announces he's retiring after the Paris Olympics in 2024. The idea was to go out on his own terms, one last hurrah on the biggest stage. But we know life doesn't always go according to plan.
And that's where the story takes another turn.
It does.
The recent injuries, the time away from the game, the lingering effects, the stress and depression, it's all taken its toll. He's not the same dominant force he was, and there are doubts about whether he'll even make the Olympic team.
That's almost heartbreaking. This icon, this legend, potentially facing the end of his career, not with a triumphant farewell, but with uncertainty, maybe even disappointment.
It's a reminder that even for the greatest athletes, the ending isn't always a fairy tale. There are external factors, injuries, loss of form, and sometimes it's just time. Our bodies and minds have limits, and accepting that, well, it can be tough, especially when you've built your identity around pushing those limits.
And yet, amidst all this uncertainty, there's this quote from Mikkel in the article that really struck me. He says, "I will always have an enormous love for this sport." I don't think anyone questions that. It's like he's saying, no matter how this ends, my passion for handball, it's still there.
That's the beauty of genuine passion, isn't it?
Yeah.
It goes beyond the wins and losses, the trophies, the accolades. It's about the joy of the game, the camaraderie, the dedication to something bigger than yourself. And in a way, that's a more powerful legacy than any medal.
It makes you think, what is it about our passions, the things we pursue that keep us going even when things are tough?
Yeah.
What drives us to keep pushing even when we don't know what the outcome will be?
Those are the questions that make Mikkel's story so relatable, so human. It's not just about handball. It's about the challenges we all face, the triumphs, the resilience we find within ourselves, and the importance of finding that thing that ignites our soul, regardless of external validation.
It's amazing, isn't it, how Mikkel's story has had all these twists and turns.
It really is.
I mean, we started with this prodigy, then the struggles in Barcelona, the rise to dominance back in Denmark, the health scare, and now this uncertain ending. It's almost like, it mirrors life itself.
It does. It reminds us that even when we think we've got it figured out, life throws those curveballs.
Yeah.
And it's not about avoiding them, but how we adapt, how we find that strength to keep going even when the path's not clear.
And that takes us back to the question from earlier. What's your handball? What's that thing, that passion in your life that you're willing to fight for, even when there are setbacks, even when things are uncertain?
Could be anything, right?
Yeah.
A career goal, something creative you're pursuing, a relationship, even a personal challenge you've set for yourself. Whatever it is, I think Mikkel's story shows us how important it is to embrace the whole journey, the ups, the downs, and finding that resilience inside to keep going when things get tough.
It's not always about reaching that perfect ending, that storybook finish. Sometimes it's about what we learn along the way, how we grow, and that unwavering commitment to something we really believe in.
Exactly. And just like how Mikkel found strength in being vulnerable, maybe it's about being more open about our struggles, leaning on those who support us, and recognizing it's okay to not have all the answers.
It's about finding that balance between striving for excellence, but also accepting our limits. Pushing our boundaries, but also knowing when to step back, take care of ourselves.
And in the end, I think it's about how we define success. Not by what others say or expect, but by the fulfillment we find in chasing our passions, overcoming challenges, and living a life that feels true and meaningful to us.
Well said. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the life and career of Mikkel Hansen, we hope you found something in his story that speaks to you, something that inspires you to embrace your own journey, all the twists and turns, and to find the courage to write your own extraordinary story.